Hello and welcome to another Warframe video. This time I'm going to be taking a look at 3 builds for Nidus. He's a frame that I don't play very often, but he is pretty fun to play because he has one of the best health in the game if you use one of his augments. And all 3 of these builds will use that augment, and then I have variations for basically 2 builds that are basically the same that change how easily you can level up his health, and then 1 build that is focused on just dealing straight up damage. As for my shards, I have an ability duration shard, an ability strength shard, or 2 strength shards, a little bit extra energy because he has fairly low energy normally, and I do have a violet archon shard for health and pickups to gain 20% each, just so I get a little bit extra energy when I'm casting abilities. Now the first build, as you can see here, is called the fastest stacks. This is the one I prefer overall, as it allows you to stack up his health very quickly, a little bit faster than Bellicose. Now with the fastest stacks, you can see here I have Parasitic Vitality. This augment is mandatory for the build because you want as much health as possible. Abundant Mutation is one that actually pairs extremely well with Parasitic Vitality because you gain an extra 200 stacks. Normally you only gain 100, and because your stacks actually affect how much health you gain, these go hand in hand. The only issue, of course, is if you do die, the Undying passive has a 30-second cooldown. But generally, if you're going to be dying as Nidus, it's either a fluke, or if you're dying a lot, you generally don't want to use Nidus in the first place because eventually enemies just deal too much damage for you to reduce it. And I also have Insatiable. So when you're standing on his 4th ability and you're mashing 1 to gain up that virulence, you're actually going to gain stacks about 3 times or almost 3 times as fast. You can see here I don't have Impetus stacked up obviously in this menu, but it's 214 before I get the 70% strength from this. So it's almost 3 extra stacks every time you gain a stack. So you can gain the 300 stacks for this extremely quickly, like within 1 or 2 minutes. So this is the fastest way to build it up. Now with Impetus, normally you'd think, well, why would you use Impetus if you're never dealing any status effects? Well, damage reflected by Parasitic Link actually does count for Impetus, so you can gain a few stacks just from this, but to make it even more reliable, I put Decoy over his 2nd ability and the Augment. Now this allows you to reach the maximum 13 stacks of Impetus, so you're gaining a significant amount of strength and efficiency, which helps you spam the ability a little bit more, but the efficiency actually doesn't matter too much on Nidus because you get energy refund as you hit enemies. So yeah, this build is just so you can build up the stacks really fast and pretty much nothing else, just making him a health tank. And because Arcane Grace scales off the maximum health you have, this regenerates health extremely quickly, so much so that you don't need adaptation on this build, and honestly it can't really fit unless you want to take out Stretch, but then your Parasitic Link range to enemies will be even lower than 30 meters, and I think 30 meters is fairly comfortable. Now for the Bellicose build, obviously I'm using Arcane Bellicose. This one requires a little more setup, and you get about the same amount of health. I think it's a little bit less, and we're not, obviously, since we don't have Decoy, we have that free slot, and we're using both Umbral mods because of that. Now with Bellicose, the interesting thing about this, or actually the annoying thing about this, is you will gain a lot of strength for this, but you first have to build up your stacks, link to an enemy, and then you gain bonus strength when you link, and then you have to build up stacks again, link an enemy again, build up stacks. So it takes a while to build it up, but you end up getting it a little bit easier in missions where you're not actually hitting that many enemies. So it works a little bit better in like public squads. But they're basically the same, but obviously fastest stacks is the best. But if you don't like swapping out Decoy and you want to keep your 2nd ability, like with this build, you're going to want to use Bellicose instead, just because that's a little bit easier. Now for damage, it's sort of similar. Obviously we unfortunately dump a lot of strength, so we won't get as much health, but we exchange that for this augment here called Teeming Virulence, so we actually gain crit chance quite a bit actually, 341, and it's almost 400% when this stacks. So we get a ton of extra crit chance, and We replace his fourth ability with Thorough Strike so we can strip armor and actually deal damage with this first ability, because even though his first ability does a lot of damage when fully stacked up, it doesn't ignore armor, so it's actually not great in the damage department. And but because we also have Larva, we can group enemies up, strip their armor, and then nuke them with his first ability. So this build is actually pretty good if you want to use Nidus as an ability only frame, as you'll be able to actually do damage without worrying about what weapons you have. But if you do have weapons, you can buff them with teaming virulence. So we're going to test it against level 230 heavy gunners. Now obviously AI's paused just so I can try to get these stacks up as quick as possible. Now you can see I'm not gaining any health from doing this yet. Now if I link to an enemy, I'm going to get a little extra strength. Now I have to keep stacking up, and you can see my health slowly going up because I'm linked to an enemy. And then anytime I can unlink and link again, and I get a little bit more health. So this is going to take a little while, and I just have to spam this. Alright, quite a bit later, and I'm still only a third of the way through. As you can see, this does take quite a long time to build stacks. And another thing is, because my virulence has a long path to go here, I can't spam it very quickly. This is a little bit quicker over here, I guess, because it's hitting that wall over here. Another thing about his first ability is if you hit a wall, it stops immediately and you can recast. But casting speed doesn't really affect it, because you still have to wait for that line to actually reach its destination before you can cast again. We're at 275, almost there. Alright, we should be at... Okay, now we're at full stack. So with everything stacked up, this is how much health we get. Now, here's another thing. Now that I've cast this, you can see that I have 72% strength. That 72% strength isn't on this parasitic link yet. We actually have to cast it again to gain the full health. Now it should be stacked. So with this build, I get 33,545 health, which is significant. These enemies won't be able to kill me at all, thanks to Grace. And I'll just gain a little extra stacks, just to make sure here. And I'll spawn some more without their AI pause. And you can watch as, especially with this fourth ability up too, I can just stand here and they simply can't kill me. I gain health too quickly for them to do anything. The only thing that can really kill you is Blast Eximus can do a decent chunk of your health, but you will regen that back. Jade Eximus is by far the worst ones, because even with this much damage reduction in health, they will eventually one-shot you, so you do have to continue rolling. And another thing about Nidus is, because it's damage redirection, if the target you're linked to is low health, they have no armor, eventually they will die. So even though I have 40 seconds left on this parasitic link, eventually this enemy will probably die before that happens. So you always have to keep aware that that'll happen. And once you disable your third ability, you see that there's a little buff there for 3 seconds. I keep that buff until that ends. So you have a little bit of leeway before you have to cast it again. But one issue again with this Bellicose build is, if that happens, you have to cast it twice, because you first gain the strength from being linked because you have extra health, but now you have to cast your link again to gain the extra strength. So there's a little bit of an annoying loop there. Which is why this was actually the first Nidus build tank that I showed on my channel, and it actually was pretty nice. But thanks to Impetus, which was added later, this process is significantly quicker, and I'll show that now. Okay, with this build, it's going to be fairly similar. I'm just going to start spamming my first ability. Now, one thing to note is, obviously I do not have any grouping ability, so it does take a little longer sometimes if enemies are not in a group to gain those stacks, but just at a few casts, I'm already at 30. Before, it took significantly longer. And actually I can speed this up by gaining extra strength by unpausing the enemy AI and casting damage decoy on an enemy. Now I'm going to quickly gain the 13 stacks of that, as there we go, 13 stacks already. Now if I link, I'm going to gain significantly faster stacks, almost 3 per stack that I gain. So I'll gain almost 4 stacks every time I slam. Now we're already at 100, which is significantly better. Let's link again. Cast my 4th ability just to get a little extra stacks from the maggots. Now obviously this is still slow even with this build, but it only takes like a minute or two in a survival mission compared to about 8 minutes with the Bellicose build. See, I'm already at 200. It was significantly longer before. And the great thing about Parasitic Link, again, is because status effects are redirected, once you cast Decoy once and gain those full stacks, your Parasitic Link will handle the rest to keep it at the 13 stacks. So as long as you're getting shot, you're never going to lose that Impetus stacks. Let's see, I should actually be nearly... Yeah, I'm already full. It only took that... Oh, and I started having that walking bug. It was that quick. Now, I can just cast my 4th ability and just keep my stacks up every once in a while. And the great thing about this is even if my Parasitic Link ends, I don't have to recast twice because all my strength is already maxed. I don't have any health restrictions or health requirements for the strength, so I can cast my 3rd ability at any time, and I will always have that maximum health. Now you notice I have 34,600 and maybe 60 health. That's the max with this build, and it takes just a minute to reach that. So it's very similar to that Bellicose build, but it's just significantly easier to actually stack that up. Alright, that took a very long time, just like the first Bellicose build, but we finally have max stacks. And now I can show you why this is the damage build. So we're going to simulate the enemies again. Now because this is a Bellicose build, we do have to cast this twice, or perhaps 3 times. Yes, 3 times? 4 times. 4 times? Oh, no, that's because my stacks are going down. Anyways, now we can use our 2nd ability, remove all their armor, and actually do good damage. Now, because we also have that augment for his 1st ability, if you don't just want to use his 1st ability for damage, we can use something like a Sobek and explode enemies with acid shells. And because they all have their armor removed and they're also very close to each other, they will die extremely quickly. So this is actually very handy for long-term missions like survival, maybe defense. You can group enemies up, strip their armor, and heal, which is why we have Archon Intensify, by the way, for even more strength. So actually your health would actually be a little bit higher just because of that extra strength boost. One thing to note is your 4th ability will affect enemies that you're linked to. So just like I was saying before, you have to watch out for the enemy that you're attached to. Because they have no armor, this enemy will die a lot quicker. So you're going to have to be spamming your Parasitic Link a little bit more than you would before, just so you can keep that strength up. So yeah, this is probably the best overall build, even though it takes a lot longer to build up stacks, just so you can gain that crit chance for your primary weapons. And you can actually kill with your 1st ability. Well, armored units. Corpus and Infested, they can be killed outright. They don't need this build at all, so perhaps you'd want the other builds for that. But for armored enemies, you definitely want Steinex's ability for this, because you can group them up already, strip their armor, and slam down, and usually get them with 1 or 2 kills. So yeah, this is just a long video, probably a little rambly about my 3 Nidus builds that I came up with, 1 old, 2 new. So hopefully this will make maybe people try out Nidus a little more, because I think he's a little underused. He definitely falls off without that augment, because, I mean, obviously, look, I only have 650 health. That'll be gone in 1 shot in Steel Path, so he doesn't really scale well unless you have that augment. So yeah, thanks for watching.